January 1945, Eastern France, the Colmar Pocket. Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy stood in his foxhole, field telephone pressed to his ear, watching as 6 massive German tanks emerged from the forest edge like iron phantoms through the snow. Behind them, more than 250 white-clad infantry soldiers advanced across the frozen field toward his position. What the German commanders didn't know was that the baby-faced young officer tracking their approach had already survived 9 major campaigns across North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and France, that the undersized farm boy from Texas, barely 19 years old, had already earned more than 20 medals for valor, and that in the next 60 minutes he would perform an act of defiance so extraordinary that it would earn him America's highest decoration for combat valor, the Medal of Honor. This is the story of how a sharecropper's son who was too small for the Marines became the most decorated soldier in United States history. How a teenager who picked cotton for $1 a day transformed into a warrior who would face impossible odds without flinching. And how one man's refusal to surrender would save an entire company from annihilation. The path to that frozen field began not with dreams of glory, but with hunger, poverty, and the desperate need to escape. Hunt County, Texas, 1925. Audie Leon Murphy was born into conditions that would break most people before they started. The 7th of 12 children, he entered the world in a ramshackle sharecropper's house where poverty wasn't just a condition, it was the air they breathed. His father, Emmett Murphy, had a talent for fathering children but possessed no skill whatsoever for feeding them. He drifted in and out of their lives like smoke, finally abandoning the family entirely when Audie was 15. His mother, Josie, struggled desperately to hold the family together. Young Audie became a hunter by necessity, not choice. He developed exceptional skill with a rifle, bringing down rabbits, squirrels, and small game to feed his brothers and sisters. Every shot mattered. Wasted ammunition meant empty stomachs. This early training, shooting under pressure, making every bullet count, calculating distance and wind instinctively, would later become the foundation of skills that would save his life dozens of times. He picked cotton for $1 a day. He pumped gas. He worked as a store clerk. School ended after 5th grade. There simply wasn't time for more education when survival demanded every waking hour. In 1941, his mother died. Audie was 16 years old. The family scattered. His younger siblings went to an orphanage. He was alone, nearly destitute, with no prospects and no future. 10 days after his 17th birthday, motivated by a desperate desire to honor his mother's memory and escape the life that had ground down his family for generations, Audie Murphy decided to enlist in the military. But the military didn't want him. Texas. Audie Murphy, age 17, weight 110 pounds, height 5 feet 5 inches, tried to join the Marine Corps. The recruiting officer took one look at the undernourished teenager and rejected him outright. Too small, too young. He tried the paratroopers, same result. Too small. Finally, the Army considered him and also initially rejected him. His baby face and slight build screamed underage, despite his claims. Murphy's older sister, Corinne, came to his rescue. She signed a notarized affidavit falsifying his birth date, adding a year to his age. On June 30th, 1942, Audie Murphy became an Army private. Basic training at Camp Walters, Texas. Advanced training at Fort Meade, Maryland. Murphy was the smallest man in his unit. Other soldiers treated him like a mascot. An officer suggested he become a headquarters runner rather than a rifleman, safer, less demanding. Murphy refused, stubbornly, completely. He was determined to prove himself in combat. What his superiors noticed beneath the unimposing exterior was something harder to quantify: exceptional bearing, natural leadership instincts, and a loyalty that bordered on fierce. He impressed enough to earn corporal stripes before ever seeing combat. In February 1943, Murphy shipped out to North Africa, assigned to Company B, 1st Battalion, 5th 10th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. He spent months training in Morocco, learning infantry tactics, waiting for his chance to prove himself. In July 1943, that chance arrived. Sicily, July 10th, 1943, the Allied invasion. Murphy's combat introduction came swiftly and violently during the Liberation Campaign. Shortly after landing, Murphy was on a scouting patrol when he spotted 2 Italian officers attempting to escape on horseback. Without hesitation, he shot them both. His platoon leader, disturbed by the cold efficiency of the killings, asked him, "Why'd you do that?" Murphy's reply was matter-of-fact, almost emotionless. "That's our job." Combat revealed something in Murphy that civilian life had never fully unleashed: the hard-scrabble years of survival, of hunting to feed his family, of accepting that life demanded ruthless efficiency, all of it translated directly into infantry warfare. He understood, at a fundamental level, that hesitation killed. He contracted malaria in Sicily, spending weeks in hospital. When recovered, he fought fiercely to remain with Company B rather than be reassigned as a replacement to another unit. His company was his family now. He would not abandon them. September 1943, the Italian mainland, Salerno landings. Murphy waded ashore at Battipaglia into chaos and German machine gun fire. During early operations along the Volturno River, Murphy was on patrol with his best friend Laddie Tipton and another soldier when German machine guns opened up. The third soldier died instantly. Tipton threw grenades toward the enemy position. Murphy responded with his Thompson submachine gun, killing 5 German soldiers in a brief, savage firefight. This became Murphy's pattern: controlled aggression, deadly accuracy, immediate action. As Allied forces fought their way north through Italy's mountains and mud, Murphy distinguished himself repeatedly. He led night patrols. He volunteered for the most dangerous assignments. He killed Germans with a cold professionalism that made veteran soldiers take notice. In October 1943, he earned a battlefield commission to 2nd lieutenant, a remarkable achievement for a 19-year-old who had entered service barely a year earlier. But promotion brought responsibilities beyond personal survival. Murphy now led men, many of them older than him. Their lives depended on his decisions. August 1944, southern France, Operation Dragoon. Murphy's unit participated in the Allied invasion, fighting through brutal combat near Marseille. Near the town of Montélimar, Murphy's best friend, Laddie Tipton, was lured into the open by a German soldier pretending to surrender. The German killed Tipton at point-blank range. Murphy's response was instantaneous and furious. He charged the German position, killed the soldiers who had murdered his friend, then commandeered their machine gun and grenades. He systematically attacked nearby German positions, killing every enemy soldier he encountered. The death of Tipton marked a turning point. Murphy had already proven himself an exceptional soldier, but the loss of his closest friend seemed to strip away the last vestiges of hesitation. What remained was something harder, colder, and infinitely more dangerous to anyone wearing a German uniform. By October 1944, Murphy had earned the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, and multiple Bronze Stars for valor. He was becoming a legend within the 3rd Infantry Division. He was wounded in the hip by a German sniper on October 26, 1944. The bullet caused gangrene. Doctors removed infected tissue, causing partial loss of hip muscle. Murphy spent months recovering. He returned to duty in January 1945. His platoon had been moved to the Colmar Pocket in eastern France, 850 square miles of German-held territory in the Vosges Mountains. German forces had maintained this pocket since November 1944, using the heavily fortified village of Holtzwihr as a strongpoint. On January 24th, Murphy's company moved into positions north of Holtzwihr. Intelligence reported that German forces, identified as elements of the 2nd Mountain Division, recently transferred from Norway and trained specifically for winter combat, were preparing a counterattack. Murphy's company held a precarious position, stretched across a U-shaped formation with 2 fingers of forest extending toward Holtzwihr. The village itself was visible across snow-covered fields. 2 American M10 tank destroyers sat astride a narrow dirt road leading into the woods. Murphy knew German armor would have to advance along that road. Early afternoon, January 26, 1945. Murphy called battalion headquarters for last-minute instructions. He was told that the 2nd Battalion, 30th Regiment, expected to arrive as reinforcement, had not yet reached their position. His orders were simple: hold your position. At 2:00 p.m., German artillery began pounding American positions. Then Murphy saw them. 6 massive tanks advancing from Holtzwihr, followed by wave after wave of white-clad infantry, more than 250 soldiers emerging from the forest edge, like ghosts against the snow. The 6 tanks were Mark 6 Tigers, or possibly Jagd Panther tank destroyers, formidable German armor designed to crush defensive positions. The 250 infantry soldiers were veteran mountain troops, trained for exactly this kind of winter assault. Murphy's company consisted of perhaps 40 men, exhausted from weeks of continuous combat. Holding a thinly defended position against overwhelming force, Murphy immediately understood the tactical situation. His men were about to be annihilated. He grabbed his field telephone and began calling in artillery coordinates to the Battalion Fire Direction Center. Then he shouted orders to his men: fall back to prepared defensive positions in the woods. Move now. His soldiers obeyed, running for the tree line, while Murphy remained at his forward command post, continuing to direct artillery fire. Behind him, one of the American M10 tank destroyers attempted to maneuver into firing position. The vehicle slid on icy ground into a ditch. Its crew scrambled to escape as German tank fire zeroed in on the position. The 2nd M10 took a direct hit. Flames erupted from the engine compartment. The vehicle's crew abandoned it immediately, running for the woods as ammunition inside began to cook off. Murphy remained in his foxhole, telephone pressed to his ear, calling adjustments to the artillery. Within seconds, American 105mm shells began crashing down between him and the advancing Germans, creating a curtain of explosive steel that slowed, but didn't stop, the enemy advance. German infantry began working their way through the artillery barrage, using shell craters for cover, advancing steadily toward Murphy's position. Murphy emptied his M1 carbine at the nearest enemy soldiers. The light rifle was never designed for extended combat. It was intended for officers and rear echelon troops, not sustained firefights. His ammunition ran out quickly. The German infantry was now less than 100 yards away. Murphy could see their faces, could hear their shouts over the artillery explosions. Behind him, the burning M10 tank destroyer sat engulfed in flames. The vehicle was a death trap, loaded with high explosive shells and ammunition that could detonate at any moment, creating an explosion that would kill anyone nearby. Murphy looked at the burning tank destroyer. Then he looked at the advancing Germans. Then he made a decision that defied all rational calculation of survival. He grabbed his field telephone and climbed onto the burning M10. The M10 tank destroyer, formerly designated as the 3-inch gun motor carriage M10, was built on a modified M4 Sherman chassis. It mounted a 76.2 mm main gun in an open-topped turret, allowing for 360-degree traverse, but leaving the crew exposed to artillery, grenades, and small arms fire. Most critically for Murphy's purposes, the M10 carried a secondary weapon mounted on the rear of the turret, a Browning M2HB 50 caliber heavy machine gun for anti-aircraft defense and engaging enemy infantry. The M2HB was, and remains, one of history's most effective heavy machine guns. Firing 50 caliber bullets at 450 DO 550 rounds per minute, it could penetrate light armor, destroy vehicles, and devastate infantry at ranges exceeding 1,000 yards. Each bullet carried enough kinetic energy to tear through multiple human targets. The M10 carried 300 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition in 50-round boxers stored under the vehicle subfloor. Murphy climbed onto the burning tank destroyer, flames licking up around the engine compartment, heat radiating through the metal turret, and seized the 50 caliber machine gun. From his exposed position atop the M10, Murphy had clear fields of fire across the entire approach. The Germans, seeing a single officer manning a machine gun on a burning vehicle, initially couldn't comprehend what they were witnessing. Then Murphy opened fire. The sound of a 50 caliber machine gun is distinctive, a deep hammering roar that drowns out nearly everything else on a battlefield. Each round leaving the barrel carries massive destructive force. Murphy's first burst caught the advancing German infantry in the open. Soldiers fell, others dove for cover. German tank commanders, recognizing the threat, began directing fire toward the burning M10. Tank shells exploded around Murphy's position. Shrapnel whined through the air. One shell hit close enough to shower Murphy with frozen dirt and metal fragments. Murphy adjusted his aim and fired again. Short, controlled bursts, precisely aimed, conserving ammunition while maintaining maximum effectiveness. Over the field telephone, still connected despite the chaos, the artillery commander asked, "How close are the Germans to your position?" Murphy's response became legendary. "Just hold the phone and I'll let you talk to one of them." The Germans were now within 50 yards. Machine gun fire from the advancing infantry stitched across the M10's armor. Murphy felt impacts against the turret, heard bullets ricocheting off metal. The M10 beneath him was an inferno. Flames consumed the engine compartment. Ammunition inside the vehicle was heating to dangerous temperatures. The entire tank destroyer could explode at any moment, a massive detonation of high-explosive shells and propellant charges that would vaporize anyone on or near the vehicle. Murphy kept firing. For over an hour, he stood alone on that burning tank destroyer, exposed to enemy fire from tanks and infantry, flames raging beneath him, and methodically cut down the attacking German force. His marksmanship, honed through years of hunting rabbits to feed his family, refined through months of combat experience, was devastatingly effective. German soldiers attempting to flank his position died before closing the distance. Infantry trying to advance across the open field were caught in concentrated machine gun fire. The German attack began to falter. The white-clad mountain troops, trained for winter assaults, were being shredded by a single soldier who refused to abandon his position. Murphy continued calling in artillery coordinates between bursts of machine gun fire, directing American shells to land among the German formations, creating devastating combinations of explosions and 50 caliber rounds. Then he was hit. A German round struck his leg, cutting through muscle. Blood soaked his trousers. The pain was immediate and intense. Murphy shifted his weight, adjusted his stance, and kept firing. The German tanks, without infantry support advancing to protect them, began withdrawing. The American artillery was too accurate, the machine gun fire too deadly. The attack was collapsing. German infantry started falling back toward Holt's Near, dragging wounded comrades, leaving dozens of bodies sprawled across the snow-covered field. Murphy fired until the last enemy soldier disappeared from view. Then, and only then, did he climb down from the burning M10. He had been wounded. He was bleeding profusely. He was exhausted from blood loss and adrenaline crash. But the battle wasn't finished. As Murphy limped back toward the tree line where his company had taken defensive positions, his field telephone went dead. The line finally severed by shell fire. Moments later, the M10 tank destroyer exploded in a massive fireball, blasting the turret clear of the chassis. Shrapnel and burning debris showered the area Murphy had occupied just seconds earlier. Murphy reached the woods. His men emerged from their positions, staring at him with expressions mixing disbelief and awe. Private Anthony Abramsky later recalled, "I expected to see the whole tank destroyer blow up under him any minute. It was the greatest display of guts and courage I have ever seen." Another soldier was more direct. "He saved our lives. If he hadn't done what he did, the Germans would have annihilated us." But Murphy wasn't finished. Despite his wound, despite exhaustion and blood loss, he refused medical attention. Instead, he quickly organized his men for a counterattack, while German forces were still disorganized. He led Company B forward, pushing through the artillery-scarred field, driving the remaining German forces back toward Holtzwil. The counterattack succeeded completely. The German assault, which had threatened to overwhelm the entire American position, was shattered. Only then, with his men secure and the enemy driven back, did Murphy finally agree to medical treatment for his leg wound. The battlefield toll spoke for itself. Murphy had personally killed or wounded more than 50 German soldiers during that hour on the burning M10. The German attack force of 250 infantry and 6 tanks had been completely defeated by one man with a .50 caliber machine gun and extraordinary courage. Company B had suffered casualties during the engagement, but Murphy's stand prevented what would have been catastrophic losses. Without his actions, the German armor and infantry would have overrun the American position, potentially causing the collapse of the entire defensive line in that sector. On June 2, 1945, near Salzburg, Austria, Lieutenant General Alexander Patch presented Murphy with the Medal of Honor and the Legion of Merit. The Medal of Honor citation recognized his actions at Holtzwil for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity involving risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. When asked after the war why he had climbed onto the burning tank destroyer and faced an entire German company alone, Murphy's answer was characteristically simple and direct. "They were killing my friends." By war's end, Murphy had become the most decorated American soldier in U.S. history. He received every military combat award for valor available from the United States Army: the Medal of Honor, Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, Legion of Merit, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor Device, and 3 Purple Hearts. He also earned France's Legion of Honor and Croix de Guerre, and Belgium's Croix de Guerre. He was credited with killing more than 240 German soldiers and wounding or capturing many more during his 27 months of combat service. He fought in 9 major campaigns: Tunisia, Sicily, Naples, Foggia, Anzio, Rome Arno, southern France, Ardennes, Alsace, Rhineland, and Central Europe. Murphy spent approximately 400 days on the front lines, more than many soldiers who served for the entire war. But statistics only tell part of the story. The deeper measure of Murphy's impact was in the lives he saved, the bomber crews protected by his unit, the infantry companies supported by his actions, the tactical innovations he helped pioneer that were incorporated into Army doctrine. July 16, 1945. The cover of Life magazine featured a photograph of Second Lieutenant Audie Murphy in dress uniform, smiling slightly, looking far younger than his 20 years. The headline declared him America's most decorated soldier. Actor James Cagney saw that Life magazine cover and invited Murphy to Hollywood in September 1945. Murphy, uncertain about his future, accepted. His acting career spanned more than 40 films over 21 years. He starred primarily in westerns, becoming one of the most popular western actors of the 1950s. In 1955, he portrayed himself in To Hell and Back, the film adaptation of his best-selling autobiography. The movie became Universal Studios' most profitable release until Jaws in 1975. But the war never truly released Murphy. He suffered what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder, but was then called battle fatigue or shell shock. He experienced nightmares, insomnia, and violent mood swings. He slept with a loaded pistol under his pillow. He became addicted to sleeping pills, then locked himself in a motel room to go through withdrawal rather than remain dependent. Murphy was forthright about his struggles, hoping to draw attention to the needs of returning veterans. He advocated publicly for better PTSD treatment and mental health services for combat veterans, advocacy that was decades ahead of its time and ultimately contributed to the establishment of the Audie L. Murphy Memorial VA Hospital in San Antonio, dedicated in 1973. May 28, 1971. Memorial Day weekend. Murphy was a passenger on a private plane flying from Atlanta to Virginia for business meetings. The aircraft encountered thick fog near Roanoke, Virginia, and crashed into a mountainside. Audie Murphy, age 46, was killed instantly. His body was recovered 2 days later on Memorial Day. He was buried with full military honors at Arlington National Cemetery on June 7, 1971. His gravesite, marked by a simple white headstone, he had specifically requested it remain plain, like that of any ordinary soldier, became the second most visited grave in Arlington, after President John F. Kennedy. A special walkway was eventually constructed to accommodate the thousands of visitors who come each year to pay respects. 80 years after the Battle of Holt's Veer, the snow-covered field where Audie Murphy made his stand, his peaceful farmland. The village of Holtzville maintains a memorial at the exact spot where Murphy climbed onto the burning M10. A bronze statue depicts him manning the .50 caliber machine gun, facing toward the village. The memorial's inscription reads, "This memorial is dedicated to the soldiers of the 3rd U.S. Infantry Division and the CC-4 under the command of the 1st French Army who liberated Holtz-Veer on 27 January 1945 after bloody combat under most trying conditions. It represents the heroic act that Lieutenant Audie L. Murphy of the 15th Infantry Regiment achieved at this site on 26 January 1945 in order to push back an enemy counterattack. For this action, he was decorated with the highest American and French honors. A road in Holtz-Veer bears his name, Rue Audie Murphy. The Audie Murphy American Cotton Museum in Greenville, Texas, houses extensive collections of his medals, uniforms, personal effects, and combat documentation. Each year, the museum hosts Audie Murphy Days celebrations honoring his memory and service. The Sergeant Audie Murphy Club, established by the U.S. Army in 1986, recognizes non-commissioned officers who exemplify the leadership, integrity, and professional excellence Murphy demonstrated. The club has expanded Army-wide, becoming one of the military's most prestigious NCO honors. But perhaps Murphy's most enduring legacy is what he represented, that heroism doesn't require physical size or privileged background, that courage can emerge from the most unlikely sources, that a malnourished farm boy who picked cotton for $1 a day could become the most decorated soldier in American military history through determination, skill, and an absolute refusal to abandon his responsibilities or his friends. Murphy never considered himself a hero. Bravery is just determination to do a job that you know has to be done, he told reporters upon returning home in 1945. I just fought to stay alive, like anyone else, I guess. But standing alone on a burning tank destroyer, wounded, exposed to enemy fire, facing impossible odds for more than an hour, that transcended simple survival instinct. That was something else entirely. That frozen afternoon in January 1945, a 19-year-old lieutenant proved something fundamental about human courage, that it isn't the absence of fear, but the absolute refusal to let fear dictate action. That sometimes one person, in the right place, with the right skills and unshakable determination, can change the outcome of an entire battle. 6 tanks, 250 enemy soldiers, one man with a machine gun on a burning vehicle. The numbers tell the story. The record speaks for itself. And 80 years later, Audie Murphy's stand at Holt's Veer remains one of the most extraordinary acts of individual combat heroism in American military history. The farm boy from Texas who became a legend, the teenager who climbed onto an inferno and refused to yield, the soldier who saved his friends by standing alone against overwhelming force. That's the legacy. That's the record. That's Audie Murphy.